The gleaming spires of the Galactic Federation Academy pierced the purple sky of Centaur Prime, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of 3 moons. Zixtal, a third-year Nexilian student, nervously adjusted his sensory filaments as he watched the newest batch of exchange students arrive through the quantum gates. The humans were different. While most species sent their most prestigious scholars, beings who had spent decades in contemplative study, the Earth delegation consisted of what appeared to be barely matured specimens. They moved with an unsettling predatory grace, their dense musculature evident even under their standardized academy uniforms. "Those are the Deathworlders," whispered Kate Trill, Zixtal's Andromedian roommate, their bioluminescent spots pulsing with anxiety. "They look like they could crush a graviton compressor with their bare manipulators." "Hands," corrected Zixtal, proud of his denological knowledge. "They call them hands." The 3 human students, Jasper, Rook, and Luna, strode confidently through the orientation hall, their heavy footfalls echoing against the crystal floors. Unlike the floating, hovering, or gliding gaits of other species, they seemed to embrace their planet's high-gravity heritage with every step. Professor Kylith, the Academy's head of interspecies relations, floated forward to greet them. Her ethereal Luminian form sparkled as she addressed the assembled students. "Welcome to our most diverse class yet. As part of our cultural exchange program, our human guests have offered to demonstrate their standard training methods." Zixtal noticed several of his classmates' appendages twitch nervously. The humans' reputation preceded them. Stories of their homeworld, Earth, had spread through the galaxy like a viral transmission. A death world of such extreme conditions that it seemed impossible any sentient life could evolve there, let alone thrive. "Thank you, Professor." Jasper stepped forward, his voice carrying easily across the hall. "We thought we'd show you a typical focus and coordination exercise from our military academy training." Military academy? Zixtal's translator must have glitched. Surely these weren't military specimens. The Federation had strict regulations about. His thoughts were interrupted by the humans, pulling out what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons. The entire assembly hall froze in terror. "Don't worry," Luna grinned, her teeth glinting in a way that made several photosensitive species flinch. "These are just training rounds. Mostly harmless." "Mostly," squeaked a vaporous entity near the back. What followed was perhaps the most terrifying and impressive display Zixtal had ever witnessed. The 3 humans began a complex dance of evasion and accuracy, firing their weapons at each other while executing acrobatic maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. They moved faster than his sensory filaments could track, ducking, rolling, and leaping while maintaining pinpoint accuracy with their weapons. What was most disturbing was their facial expressions. They were smiling, laughing even, as they engaged in what any rational being would consider lethal combat. Direct hit. Rook called out cheerfully after landing a shot on Jasper's shoulder, causing him to spin dramatically. "Nice one," Jasper replied, returning fire while in mid-rotation. "But watch your left flank." Professor Exilith's luminescence had dimmed considerably, but she made no move to stop the demonstration. Perhaps, like everyone else, she was too stunned to intervene. When the humans finally ceased their combat exercise, the hall remained silent. The 3 stood there, slightly winded but otherwise appearing unharmed, despite the numerous impact marks on their uniforms. "That's just a basic warm-up," Luna explained to the stunned audience. "Usually we'd run this drill for at least an hour, but we didn't want to take up too much orientation time." An hour. Zixtal felt his primary heart skip a beat while his secondary heart began pumping overtime to compensate. "Any questions?" Jasper asked brightly. A brave quantum collective in the front row raised a wavering energy tendril. Is this how all humans train for academic studies?" "Oh no," Rook laughed, causing several students to flinch. "This is just for maintaining basic focus and reaction times. Wait until you see our actual combat training." Zixtal watched as 3 different species simultaneously engaged their emergency hibernation protocols. He couldn't blame them. He himself was fighting the urge to extrude his protective mucus layer. As the orientation continued, he couldn't help but notice how the other students had unconsciously created a perfect 3-meter radius around the humans. All except for Vixena, a young Pyrrhilian whose species was known for their curious nature, despite their fragile crystalline bodies. She had edged closer, her facets refracting light in what Zixtal recognized as their expression of fascination. Would you teach me?" she asked the humans, her voice chiming like delicate bells. The humans' faces lit up with what Zixtal's xenobiology studies suggested was genuine pleasure. "Of course," Luna responded enthusiastically. "We'll start you off easy. Maybe just some basic evasion techniques first." Watching the humans gently explain their training methods to the delicate Pyrrhilian, Zixtal felt his fear gradually being replaced by curiosity. Perhaps there was more to these Deathworlders than their terrifying combat capabilities. As if reading his thoughts, Jasper caught his eye and smiled. "You're welcome to join us too," he offered. "The more the merrier." Zixtal felt all 4 of his hearts skip a beat this time. What had he gotten himself into by choosing xenological studies? One thing was certain. This was going to be an interesting academic year. The orientation ended with Professor Xylith making a rapid announcement about updating the Academy's insurance policies, while the humans began enthusiastically planning their first training session with their new alien friends. "Remember," Rook called out as they left the hall, "tomorrow we'll show you how we study for exams." Zixtal didn't want to imagine what that might entail, but he had a feeling he'd find out soon enough. The Academy's annual physical assessment day arrived with all the subtlety of a supernova. Zixtal stood at the edge of the massive evaluation chamber, his sensory filaments twitching with nervous energy as he watched the preparations. The chamber, normally used for zero-gravity quantum mechanics experiments, had been transformed into what the humans cheerfully called an obstacle course. "This can't be right," muttered Administrator Plex, their gelatinous form rippling with concern as they reviewed the course parameters. "The human students are requesting we increase the gravity simulation to 3 times standard." The 3 humans, Jasper, Rook, and Luna, were performing what they called warm-up stretches, movements that made them look like they were trying to fold themselves in half. Several medical staff stood by, presumably to treat the inevitable injuries. "Don't forget to adjust the atmospheric pressure too," Luna called out cheerfully, hanging upside down in a position that made several invertebrate species visibly uncomfortable. "Earth standard, please. Earth standard." Kitral's bioluminescent spots pulsed in panic. "But that's crushing," supplied Vixena, her crystalline form shimmering with excitement rather than fear. Since joining the humans' training sessions, the fragile Pyrrhilian had developed an unsettling enthusiasm for what she called Deathworlder activities. The assessment began with the standard evaluations. Species from across the galaxy demonstrated their evolutionary advantages, Andromedians showcasing their perfect spatial awareness, Luminians displaying their energy manipulation, quantum collectives demonstrating their ability to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Then came the humans' turn. First up, the endurance test, announced Administrator Plex, their voice modulator struggling to maintain composure. Please proceed until you reach your physical limit. What followed would be forever burned into Zixtal's memory banks. The humans began running, not the elegant floating locomotion of evolved beings, but a relentless, predatory movement that seemed to consume distance with terrifying efficiency. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. Shouldn't they have stopped by now? Whispered a concerned medical officer, checking their instruments for the 4th time. Their internal temperature is elevated, and they're losing water through their skin. Oh, that's just sweating, Rook explained between steady breaths as he passed on his 78th lap. We can do this all day. All day. The medical officer's appendages wrapped around themselves in distress. The Academy's xenobiology laboratory was designed to handle the most dangerous substances in the known galaxy. Triple reinforced quantum barriers, atmospheric scrubbers, and emergency neutralization fields made it one of the safest facilities in Federation space. Today, however, those safety measures were being tested by something far more terrifying than usual: human snacks. What do you mean it's just a condiment? Professor Aixther's protective membranes were fully extended as she examined the small red bottle that Jasper had casually placed on the lab bench. The hazard detection systems were screaming in 7 different frequencies. Oh, this is nothing. Luna grinned, pulling out another bottle. Wait until you try the extra spicy version. The day had started normally enough. The class was studying chemical defense mechanisms evolved by various species. The Andromedians demonstrated their natural toxins. The Perillian students showed off their crystalline acid secretions, and the quantum collectives explained their ability to temporarily exist in a poisonous state. Then the humans decided to contribute to the lesson. We brought some examples from Earth's cuisine, Rook announced proudly, unpacking what he called a lunchbox. The containment alarms immediately began wailing. These readings can't be correct, Cottrell muttered, their bioluminescent spots flickering rapidly as they analyzed the data. According to this, that red substance contains capsaicin levels that would classify it as a chemical weapon in most systems. You mean hot sauce? Jasper laughed. This is the mild stuff. My grandmother would call this baby food. The entire class watched in horror as Luna casually opened one of the bottles and added several drops to something she called a sandwich. The air filtration system went into emergency overdrive. Would anyone like to try some? She offered, holding out the sandwich. Several students engaged their emergency preservation protocols on reflex. Vixna, who had been getting increasingly adventurous since starting her fitness training with the humans, stepped forward. I volunteer. Her crystalline form chimed with excitement. Vixna, no. Zixtal's sensory filaments twisted in panic. Your species has a melting point. But it was too late. The Perillian student had already taken a bite. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her entire crystalline form began to glow with an intensity that triggered the lab's radiation sensors. What is this sensation? She chimed at a frequency that cracked 3 beakers. It's like my and all 80 judaler stugluted to judalar is 80 tem pitting to a che fuse ion. That's the capsaicin. Rook explained enthusiastically. Pretty mild, right? Wait until you try the ghost peppers we brought. Ghost peppers. Professor Aixther's tentacles curled in dismay. You mean to tell me you named a food after incorporeal entities? Oh yeah. Jasper nodded, pulling out another container that made the hazard detection system simply give up and shut down. These little beauties are about 170 times hotter than the sauce Vixen had just tried. The professor's colour shifted rapidly through several warming spectrums, and humans consume these voluntarily. For fun, Luna added cheerfully, "We even have competitions to see who can eat the spiciest ones." Competitions? Catrol's spots had gone completely dark with disbelief. You compete to see who can endure the most chemical warfare. Want to try? Rook offered, holding out what appeared to be a tiny red pod of pure Beth. To everyone's surprise, Catrol's spots suddenly pulsed with determination. Yes, if Vixena can do it, so can I. What followed was a scene that would later be described in Academy incident reports as voluntarily induced chemical chaos. One by one, students from different species stepped forward to attempt what the humans called their spice challenge. The results were varied. The Andromedians discovered their natural toxins provided no defense against capsaicin. Catrol's bioluminescence became so intense they temporarily became a navigation hazard for nearby spacecraft. 3 quantum collectives had to be persuaded to return to a single-dimensional state after attempting to escape the sensation by existing in multiple realities simultaneously. And through it all, the humans sat there, casually munching on their ghost peppers, as if they weren't consuming something that had just caused a vaporous entity to temporarily achieve plasma state. This is fascinating. Professor Exthor had recovered enough to start taking notes. Your species not only tolerates these chemical compounds, but actively seeks them out for pleasure. How did this trait evolve? Well, Jasper began, reaching for another pepper. On Earth, we have this thing called cooking shows. The explanation was interrupted by the arrival of Academy security, responding to reports of a possible chemical weapon attack. They found instead a lab full of students in various states of capsaicin-induced distress, 3 cheerfully snacking humans, and 1 very excited Perillian whose crystalline form was now emitting enough heat to power a small city. Should we call medical? One of the security officers asked uncertainly. Nah, they'll be fine, Luna assured them, although we might want to get some milk. Milk? Zixtal had managed to avoid trying the peppers, but was fascinated despite himself. What is milk? Oh, it's just a liquid young Earth mammals produce to feed their offspring, Rook explained casually. The security officers exchanged glances. Somehow, that explanation was more disturbing than the chemical chaos they had walked in on. In the end, the Academy had to update its hazardous materials protocols to include a new category, specifically for human culinary items. Professor Exthor's research paper on human capsaicin tolerance became required reading in xenobiology departments across the galaxy. And Vixena. She became the first non-human to successfully complete what the humans called the one-chip challenge, although the event did temporarily change her crystalline structure's atomic arrangement. As the class ended and the atmospheric scrubbers worked overtime to clear the air, Zixtal couldn't help but wonder what other terrifying aspects of human culture they would discover next. Hey, Jasper called out as they left the lab, wait until you see what we brought for dessert. 3 different species immediately engaged their emergency evacuation protocols. The Academy's emergency response training module was considered a formality by most species. After all, advanced civilizations had long since engineered their way past the need for primitive survival instincts. But nobody had told the humans this. What do you mean you've never experienced an actual earthquake? Brooke asked incredulously during the pre-simulation briefing. How do you prepare for planetary tectonic events? We don't have those anymore, Administrator Plex explained, their gelatinous form rippling with confusion. Most civilized worlds have planetary stabilization grids. The three humans exchanged looks that Zixtal had learned to recognize as their humans are about to make things interesting expression. Request permission to modify the simulation parameters. Luna raised her hand, grinning. We think our classmates could benefit from some realistic scenarios. The resulting simulation would later be referred to in Academy records as the incident. It started simple enough. The standard holographic emergency scenarios began playing out: minor power fluctuations, basic system malfunctions, the sort of things that could be solved by following proper protocols. Then Jasper accessed the control panel. "Let's make this a bit more exciting," he said, fingers dancing across the interface. Warning lights began flashing across the simulation chamber. Multiple system failures detected. The AI announced calmly, "Gravitational stabilizers offline. Atmospheric processors malfunctioning. Seismic activity detected. Temperature regulation critical." "Now this is more like it," Luna exclaimed as the floor began to shake. The alien students watched in horror as their carefully controlled environment descended into chaos. The humans, however, seemed to come alive. "Everyone stay calm." Jasper took charge, his voice cutting through the panic. "Rook, check structural integrity. Luna, work on power restoration. The rest of you, buddy system, nobody moves alone." "But the protocols." Catral's spots pulsed frantically. "Protocols won't save you when everything's falling apart," Rook called out while somehow simultaneously reinforcing a buckling support beam and guiding a group of panicking Vapors entities to safety. "You need instincts." What followed was a masterclass in what the humans called crisis management. While most species froze or attempted to access their non-functioning emergency protocols, the humans moved with practiced efficiency through the escalating disaster. Luna managed to restore partial power by doing something with the fusion cores that violated at least 7 safety regulations. Rook organized an evacuation route through what he called the least structurally compromised sections. Jasper, meanwhile, seemed to be everywhere at once, helping trapped students, preventing secondary disasters, and somehow finding time to teach impromptu survival techniques. "See," he explained to a group of stunned observers while carrying 3 quantum collectives to safety. "The key is to expect everything to go wrong at the worst possible moment. Then you're never surprised." That's horrible," Zixtal exclaimed, helping Vixena navigate through a particularly unstable section. "That's Earth." Luna laughed, using her body to shield a group of smaller species from falling debris. "Where we're from, this is just a normal Tuesday." The simulation reached its climax when the AI announced an imminent core breach, a scenario that was definitely not part of the original programming. Did they just hack the simulation to make it more dangerous? Administrator Plex asked weakly. "Of course they did," Vixena chimed excitedly, her crystalline form vibrating with what might have been fear or enthusiasm. It was getting harder to tell the difference since she started hanging out with the humans. The humans' solution to the core breach was unconventional. It involved what they called improvised engineering, several violations of fundamental physics, and at least one instance of Rook using himself as a conductor for emergency power rerouting. When the simulation finally ended, the chamber was a mess of holographic destruction, violated safety protocols, and thoroughly traumatized but very much alive students. That was awesome. Luna high-fived her fellow humans. "Next time we should add a solar flare." "And maybe some volcanic activity," Jasper added thoughtfully. "Don't forget the tsunami potential." Rook chimed in. The rest of the class stared at them in a mixture of horror and newfound respect. Even Administrator Plex seemed unsure whether to commend their performance or recommend psychological evaluation. "Is your entire planet like this?" Kittrell asked, their bioluminescence still flickering with residual panic. "Nah," Jasper grinned. "This was nothing. Wait until we tell you about our weather." The ensuing discussion about Earth's meteorological phenomena caused 3 different species to preemptively file for trauma counseling. But something had changed. The alien students had witnessed firsthand how the humans' seemingly primitive instincts and brutal survival adaptations could mean the difference between life and death. Even in a simulated crisis, their quick thinking and practical solutions had proven invaluable. "Maybe," Zixtal mused as they left the chamber, "there's something to be said for expecting the worst." "That's the spirit." Luna clapped him on the back, causing all 4 of his hearts to jump. "Just wait until next week's wilderness survival course." The collective groan from the class was interrupted by Vixena's enthusiastic chiming. "Will there be more spicy food?" 3 different emergency containment fields activated automatically at the mere mention of human cuisine. The Academy's graduation ceremony was meant to be a dignified affair, showcasing the refined achievements of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Instead, it became a testament to how much things had changed since the humans arrived. The Grand Hall was decorated with quantum light displays and gravity-defying crystalline structures. Distinguished guests from across the Federation had gathered to witness the completion of another academic year. But all eyes were on the 3 humans and their surprisingly large group of alien friends. "I can't believe you're actually going through with this," Zixtal whispered to Vixena, who had somehow convinced the graduation committee to allow a special presentation. "The humans taught me that sometimes you have to challenge traditions." Her crystalline form chimed confidently. She had come a long way from the fragile Beryllian who once feared her own shadow. The ceremony began traditionally enough. Species after species demonstrated their mastery of advanced technologies and theoretical concepts. The quantum collectives presented their research on interdimensional communication. The Andromedians showcased their developments in bioluminescent data storage. Then came the humans' turn. For our final presentation, Jasper announced, standing alongside Rook and Luna, "We'd like to demonstrate what we've learned about interspecies cooperation." What followed was either the most impressive or most terrifying display in Academy history, depending on who you asked. The humans had somehow combined their physical training with various alien abilities. Rook performed what he called Parker, using quantum collective portals. Luna demonstrated combat techniques that incorporated Andromedian bioluminescence for tactical advantage. Jasper showcased survival skills enhanced by Beryllian crystalline structures. But the real surprise came when their alien friends joined in. Kittrell, once terrified of physical exertion, executed a perfect series of acrobatic maneuvers while maintaining complex bioluminescent patterns. Vixena, whose species was known for their fragility, demonstrated crystalline forms specifically adapted for human-style combat training. And Zixtal, to his own surprise, found himself explaining how Nexilian's sensory capabilities could enhance human survival strategies. The audience watched in stunned silence as Deathworlder techniques merged with advanced alien technologies in ways nobody had thought possible. Then the real emergency happened. The Academy's quantum core, stressed by years of containing various human-induced chaos, chose that moment to begin a catastrophic failure. Warning sirens blared as reality itself began to fluctuate around them. Finally, Luna exclaimed, A chance to put all our training to practical use. What happened next would be talked about in Federation space for decades to come. The humans immediately organized the panicking crowd using their crisis management experience. But instead of just relying on their own abilities, they coordinated with their alien friends in ways that showcased everything they'd learned from each other. Quantum collectives created stable reality bubbles, while humans guided people to safety. Andromedians used their bioluminescence to create emergency guidance systems. Perillians reinforced structural weak points with their crystalline abilities. Nexilians used their sensory capabilities to detect and prevent secondary disasters. And through it all, the humans kept everyone's spirits up with what they called gallows humor. See, Jasper called out while helping stabilize a failing gravity generator. This is why you always expect things to go wrong, just like the simulations. Rook added cheerfully, using his strength to hold up a buckling quantum barrier, while Vixena reinforced it with her crystals. Though usually with fewer dimensional rifts, Luna noted, casually sealing a tear in space-time with the help of Kestrel's energy manipulation. When the crisis was finally contained, the graduation hall was a mess of quantum fluctuations, violated physics, and thoroughly impressed Federation officials. "I believe," announced the Academy's Chancellor, their multiple appendages still trembling slightly, "we have just witnessed the true value of interspecies cooperation." The humans, covered in various forms of debris and quantum residue, just grinned. "You know what this calls for?" Rook suggested. "Celebration dinner," Luna exclaimed. "With extra spicy sauce," Jasper added. The collective groan from their alien friends was interrupted by Vixena's enthusiastic chiming. "I'll bring the ghost peppers." As emergency containment fields automatically deployed around the humans' proposed celebration, Zixtol realized something profound. The Deathworlders hadn't just survived at the Academy, they had changed it forever. Their seemingly primitive adaptations, combined with advanced alien capabilities, had created something entirely new. "You know," he said to his human friends, all four of his hearts finally beating in sync with the chaos around him, "I think the galaxy wasn't ready for humans." "Oh, definitely not," Luna laughed. "But that's what makes it fun." Speaking of fun, Jasper added with a suspiciously innocent expression, "Wait until you see what we've planned for the alumni reunion." 3 different species immediately filed for early retirement. But as Zixtal looked around at his unlikely group of friends, humans and aliens alike, he couldn't help but smile. The galaxy might not have been ready for humans, but maybe that was exactly what it needed. After all, as the humans liked to say, life was either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Though perhaps, he mused as Vixena began distributing what she called graduation pepper sauce, some adventures could do with a little less spice.